Hey, welcome to Whitefields Community Church Sermon Extra. Great to have you with us once again this week. And if you did miss Sunday's sermon, you can go to whitefieldschurch.com and go and download the sermon right there. It's already up. It's up on SoundCloud and many of the other platforms that you might enjoy using. We're here with Pastor Nick, who is the pastor of Whitefields Community Church, and we're going to discuss today just a little bit about what we talked about on Sunday. And one of them was an interesting verse that we didn't have time to really cover, but we can cover here, and that was verse 17 of chapter 12, which, you know, Paul has this kind of cryptic phrase in there, and let me just put it in context. I'll read from the beginning, from verse 17. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all, if possible, so far as it depends on you. Live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So this phrase, by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. What does that mean?
Yeah, it does seem kind of like antithetical to everything he's saying, right? Like feed them, take care of them, love them, and then heap burning coals on their head, right? Like it's whoa, well, where'd that come from? It's pretty intense there. I think that we have to take it in context of what he's saying, because he says in the next verse, don't repay evil for evil, overcome evil with good. So clearly he's not talking about burning somebody, you know, and making them suffer or hurting them for hurting you. And so it's not a vengeful thing. It's not retribution. It's got to be referring to one of two things. One is that, you know, there's two main theories. One is that it's disarming in the sense of like, you know, let's say you are doing something, somebody offends you, and you get really hot and angry and everything, and then that person realizes what they did, and they come back and they're totally humble and like repentant. Well, then that leaves you kind of like, wow, disarmed, but almost kind of embarrassed that you reacted that way. So that's the one idea, that it's disarming and it leaves the person hot and then kind of embarrassed that they responded that way. The other one, which I think is actually probably the real meaning, is that, you know, back in the day, you didn't have Bic lighters and gasoline or whatever, kerosene to start fires, so it was harder to start a fire. So what you could do is, like, if I had a fire going, I would keep some coals, and I would bring you my coals and give those to you so that you could start a fire. And again, the whole idea is that that's also very disarming, right? If somebody sins against you and then you do an act of kindness to them, it leaves them kind of totally disarmed and like, wait a second, that's not how I expected them to react. And, you know, we've talked a lot about how we live in this culture where everybody seems to be outraged all the time, you know, in media and politics and all that stuff. And what a different vision of relationships with people who hurt us or who don't agree with us if we would actually serve them. And think about how disarming that would be, and how much that might even just change people's whole I don't know what I'm trying to say, their attitude, I guess. And, you know, I think about Proverbs where it says that a soft word turns away wrath. I think it's the same idea here.
Totally, yeah, and I think Jesus modeled that for us as well, where he said, you know, if a man asks you to walk a mile with him, then, you know, walk with him too. If you ask for a shirt, give him your tunic as well. So that's definitely, Paul is building on that same exact principle here by, as you say, disarm. You know, if somebody asks you to do something, you go that extra mile, and by doing that, you know, in a sense, you kind of have the upper hand, and then that's an avenue for the gospel. Like, you know, why are you doing this for me? You know, right. It's a question that they ask. You know, and modeling that love that Jesus had. And there was another one of the major topics of chapter 12, of course, is spiritual gifts, which you touched on. And one of the questions that was discussed with the community groups was, how do I know what is my spiritual gift? Yeah. You know, how do I find out what God's gifted me with?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are a couple ways. You know, sometimes they have these spiritual gifts tests. I'm personally not a big fan of that. You know, because there's so much that goes into that kind of thing that can be skewed and on off and all that. So here's a few tips on this. Number one, do some personal analysis. So when you go into an area, maybe you walk into the church, you see needs. Now, another person might walk into the church and they see needs, but the needs that they see are different than the needs that you see. That's because God's gifted you or made you in a certain way. And maybe that's how he wants you to serve, is because you see those needs that other people don't see, and you know how to meet them, or you know how to organize people to meet them. I think that's a big way. Let's see. Another one is it's worth asking some people other than yourself, because I think fundamentally we got to admit that we do not see ourselves clearly. Other people might see things about us that we don't see in ourselves. And I know so many times, I've been able to speak into somebody's life and say, hey, I see that you have this gift or this ability. And they say, wow, I never thought that about myself. But, it encourages them by knowing that somebody else sees that. So you might ask somebody, what gifts do you think I have? What ways do you think God is gifting me? And another thing we mentioned yesterday is just considering also there might be some areas of need, and maybe you just need to step out into those areas of need and meet those needs, and then ask God to give you the gift for that particular need. So,
and also, I think you mentioned that sometimes it aligns with your natural gift, and then sometimes it's not aligned with
or your talents and abilities.
Yeah, that's of course. So, well, that's some good food for thought for those particular verses, and we'll be on to chapter 13 next week. And so definitely comment, and we would love to hear from you. On YouTube, ring the bell. Of course, you get notifications every time we post something new. And Facebook and SoundCloud, we're up there. Instagram, join us, like, subscribe, all those things, and we'll see you next week. God bless.